Hey, interwebs, Mick the old punk. It is Tuesday afternoon, and I have been in my office. This is my third bedroom here, but in my office, the other side of the house, and I have been really struggling with procrastination. So I thought, let me just quickly throw the camera on here to try and discuss my thoughts, because if this can help one of you, that's great. But the truth is, this is rather therapeutic for me. And simply focusing on talking to the camera, it kind of stops some of my higher brain function. So I'm more able to focus on the topic I'm talking about versus if I was just thinking about it myself. I'm going a thousand different directions, right? Or my shiny object syndrome, as I call it. So last week I released a couple of videos, and in one of them I mentioned how procrastination is a negative byproduct of perfectionism. And if, like me, you've been through trauma, there's a high likelihood you struggle with procrastination. And the internal narrative, even if you're not saying it to yourself on a conscious level, the internal narrative is essentially something like this: I'm not going to be able to do it perfectly, so why bother starting it? And there's a lot of details that are being glossed over there. There's a lot of gaps that I'm basically allowing to be filled in by your imagination. But to me, it comes down to two distinct areas that I think ultimately might be two sides of the same coin. First one being, as I mentioned, I'm not going to be good enough. I'm not going to do it good enough. I'm not smart enough to do it. Whatever the negative self-talk is, ultimately it's like, well, why bother starting? Because you're not going to be good enough. You're not going to get it done right. You're not going to get it done the way you think it should be done. So there's that aspect of it, right? The second part of it, which, as I say, might just be two sides of the same coin, and that's being visible. And if any of you normies are watching this, like, what are you talking about being visible, right? But the truth is, many trauma survivors, I would say the vast majority of them, go out of their way to not be seen, to essentially be invisible, right? It's one of the reasons I've gained so much weight and struggle to get it off, because if somebody notices I'm losing weight, I'm visible. Whereas when you stay fat, it's a sort of a protection mechanism, and quite frankly, people don't tend to notice you as much, right? Being visible is in some ways easy to hide, in some ways hard to hide. And as an entrepreneur, it's very difficult to hide, because it's essentially impossible for me to get new clients without going out and doing sales calls, doing networking events. It's almost impossible for me to upsell my existing clients unless something massive comes out that forces the issue. But the flip side of that is, my industry is going through a massive change right now, and there aren't too many people spearheading this to do what's right by the clients. Instead, they're going along with what's always worked in this industry, and that is essentially IT guys are left to pick up the scraps from the table and make a meal out of it, even though quite often we're not given the tools to do so, or the financials to cover the cost of those tools. And I know so many IT guys that end up giving a lot of free services to clients because they know their clients need them, but they're not able to upsell them or articulate on why they need it. And I'm there myself. I've done this myself. So being visible or being invisible is not compatible in my mind with being a successful entrepreneur or a successful salesperson, or even a successful person in life, right? Because you're not getting out there. You're not being visible. So yeah, there's two aspects to it, right? Being visible, I think, is that the core for me. And then the second part is, why bother starting? Because you're not going to be good enough. Don't even bother. I've mentioned several times I'd like to start some kind of community here. So if you're reading this, if you're listening to this, please do me a favor. If you struggle with procrastination, even if it's just seemingly minor, I'd love it if you could put something in the comments. And while we're at that, I was talking to some female friends this weekend who are in the mental health industry, and they all seem really pleased that I've decided to take this project on to try and help others out while helping myself out. Let's get that clear. Um, I would like to ask you a favor, that if this is of use to you, go ahead and subscribe and share it with somebody. I would love to get up to, I don't know, 1,000 subscribers, because I think once you get to that level, I mean, compared to the size of the internet, it's nothing, it's tiny, right? But I think once I get to the point where I've got 1,000 people or more coming back to the channel on a regular basis, I might be able to start customizing videos that can actually help you out or better address questions you have and get that sense of community going. So please, I'm nowhere near 1,000 right now, but let's aim high, and let's see if we can get a few more subscribers going on here before the end of the year. And if we hit 1,000 by the end of the year, well, I don't see that happening, but you never know, right? One video could take off. So yeah, procrastination is, I think, a negative byproduct of perfectionism. And since I know logically that I cannot be perfect any more than you can, I'm setting myself up for failure, as you may be, right? In many ways, going through trauma at such an early age has a lot of similarities to religion, right? You become indoctrinated with the trauma in the way you become indoctrinated with whatever religion you grew up with. And I don't mean that as a negative. I mean that as in, if you're born in a Christian country and you are likely to be a religious person, then you'll likely be Christian. If you're born in a Muslim country and you grow up to be a religious person, there's a likelihood you're going to be Muslim. The same with a Sikh or a Hindu or a Buddhist. It's just the prevailing. Sorry, there's a squirrel on my window for some reason. That's just a prevailing emphasis. No, what's the right expression that the squirrels throw me off? If you're born into a country that is religious, the prevailing winds are you're going to hear more about that religion than others, which I think increases the odds that you grow up with that particular religion. Again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that's kind of how things go. And so if you transfer that over to the trauma scenario, if all you're getting is abuse from the people entrusted with your care, especially if you're really young, because your mind isn't formed enough to be able to deal with these situations. Certainly wasn't in my case. I was going through this nonsense before I could even speak. So I had no way of understanding that I wasn't the fault. I wasn't the problem. The problem was the crazy ass people taking care of me, or supposedly taking care of me. But it's all I knew. And because my mind couldn't process it, it does the next best thing, and it starts blaming me as being the broken link, as being the weak part, right? And that's one of the most insidious things about trauma. But because it's over and over and over again at such an early age, you're being indoctrinated much the way you would be in a cult, you know? And yes, I realize I just kind of compare religion to a cult, but on some levels there are a lot of similarities, and I apologize if that's offending any religious people out there. I'm just keeping it real. There's a lot of similarities, you know? So how do you unprogram that? That's something that unfortunately there's no easy button. It's not just, today I'm not going to believe in this religion, or I'm going to believe in that religion. Today I realize that I wasn't the fault with my abusive situation. I was the victim, but I was so young that I wasn't able to comprehend that. And by the time I started getting some kind of insight into that, I was way, way older, and I had many, many years of this negative programming ingraining itself into my thought process. So it's not easy to undo that, even if you have the knowledge and the support. It's one of those 2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes, or 2 steps back. I don't know how you would say that. But essentially, it's not linear in your journey for recovery. And I wish I had known many years ago that procrastination, for the most part, is simply a byproduct of perfectionism, and in my case the perfectionism stems from the crappy childhood I had. It would have helped me in many ways. Instead of beating myself up for years, calling myself lazy and every kind of negative way of saying that to myself, I could have had a little bit of grace and understanding, saying, you know what, I'm really struggling with this right now, but if you look back from a healthier perspective, I wasn't given a chance. I had no other way of understanding the situation. And so I took a bad situation and made the best of it, even though in hindsight, in some ways I hurt myself, right? It's that using shame to hurt yourself, which is the topic of a previous video. So if you have struggled with procrastination, please take a minute and write it in the comments below. Don't procrastinate, just go ahead and do it. I know it will help me. I suspect it will help others. And please, let's go ahead and help me grow this channel. I'm not very good at asking for help, but here I am asking for help. I'd love to get to 1,000 subscribers. I know that's not going to happen anytime soon, but I don't think it's too lofty a goal. And quite frankly, I enjoy making these videos. I hope you do too. Alright guys, I think we're going to call it quits right there. Have a good day.